Hello, it's Debbie Gilbert from the Business Awards show, and I'm also the founder of the Best Business Women Awards. And today I am joined by coach, speaker, trainer Clare Haynes of Wildfire, who has been doing what she does for the last 20 odd years. And she's going to tell us all about her journey in her business. And we're going to talk about awards and what role that's played, because she's had some very exciting wins this year. And we're going to get her to share some business tips at the end, because I think over 20 years in business is an awful long time. And you'll know, Clare, you're way above the average time that anybody has business for. So welcome, Clare.
Thank you, Debbie.
Lovely to meet you. Um, Clare, tell me about your business journey, because it began over 20 years ago. And I know our listeners will be really interested to understand why you started your business and what motivated you to go into being self-employed.
Okay, so I worked for a national charity. I worked in fundraising, and prior to that, I'd had a business I'd worked in sales, and I was always, a workaholic. I loved what I did, and I just happened to find myself in a situation where I was really dedicated, but the politics and I had a team that it just got to a point where I couldn't really protect my team because of certain structures and all that kind of thing. And I just got really frustrated with it. And I'd always wanted to go to Australia. And so at this point, I was 30, yeah, I was 30, 31. And so at lunchtime, I went out and got my Australian visa to go there for a year. And then I came back and resigned. And so I just kind of gave up the career. And then I ended up working in Sydney in a jazz club. So it turned out to be the number one jazz club in Australia. I was just waitressing. It was a complete fluke. And I was serving this guy steak. And I knew I wanted to change things, but I didn't know what I wanted to go and do. And this guy that I was serving steak, he's been really awkward. And I just kind of thought, you know what? I'm going to win you over and I'm going to get the best tip ever. And so, we sorted it out and he gave me the best tip and he offered me a job and all these kind of things happened. And I went home that night thinking, that's what it is. You give people their right environment, you give people what they need, and they'll give you everything. And so I came back to the UK and I said to my friend, I want to help people with the world of work and do this. I don't know how to do it. She said, oh, it's coaching. I said, well, what's coaching? Coaching had just come to the UK as something you could train in. And I said, well, what? Well, why? And she said, because you've always coached me. And so then I trained as a coach and got into the business world and it went from there.
Wow. So that was, at a time when, social media didn't exist, and networking, because obviously I've been in business 27 years, so I remember that time well, where networking was just emerging. So how did you get the business off the ground and get clients in actually quite an
Quite
emerging
an
industry
emergency.
at the time?
I I'm from Leamington Spa in the Midlands. At the time, I was living in London, and I had my eye on moving out of London. I just happened to get. I asked them if I could have a column, so I helped them, and I wrote a column for the local newspaper. So I had some career coaching clients that way, and then I would contact women's arms of national organisations, so things like the Institute of Project Management, and then I would go and speak for them about whether it's stress, how you communicate, how you get your voice across. Because obviously for women, I mean, it's still emerging, but that's a really important thing, and it can be quite an emotive issue. So that's how it happens. And then I just got known, and then someone would say, "Would you write an article for our trade magazine?" And it just grew from there.
Wow. And
Mm.
was networking part of your journey?
Sorry.
Was networking part of your journey?
Yeah, I actually set up before I had my kids. I actually set up a network. So I'm so impressed with you as a mum. You managed to keep yours going. The rest of it, I didn't when I had my kids, but I set one up in back in Leamington, and yeah, I did. I got to know lots of different people, and it was always. And I think we can underestimate how lonely it can be when you set off on a business journey and how much courage it takes and how much resistance you might feel from other people. So it's so nice to be in a room with other people that understand your journey.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess it kind of went well with your brand of confident conversations as well.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
confident conversations, if people are listening to the podcast and they're struggling to have conversations, what sort of tips can you quickly share about this? Because obviously it's a very big topic, but there must be some very quick tips that you could share with people.
Yeah, I would say my number one is the power of the pause. So we always think we have to jump into space or we have to react. And actually, we have much more power by just saving energy, most importantly, by just kind of letting it hang. If nothing else, just leaving a big gap between feeling the need to respond so you have some thinking time. And then another one would be stop apologizing, particularly for women. It's almost like we're inbuilt to say sorry. And if we can save that energy by not apologizing, think, what do I actually think about this? And then learn some phrases to kind of counter. If we are awful and apologizing too much, or we know we're almost people pleasing or whatever it is, then just to recognize our own patterns and then think of other phrases that we can replace. Or you just take a deep breath instead of saying sorry. Because I think as well as it's not nice to be a people pleaser, it's not nice to always apologise. It's also the fact that it's stealing our energy. When we've got our breath going out and saying something, we're not having that time to just think calmly about how we really want to respond. And we also reduce our opinion, of course. We know this about women particularly, but men do it too. So I would say they were my two main ones. They're the ones that most commonly come up in order to allow you to have more courage and to speak clearly.
Yeah, that's really useful. And do you work with men and women?
I I do, and it always surprised me. I think that women have more of a need for what I do, but I seem to also attract a lot of men, and I
Okay.
don't quite know why. I know why I deal with them and how I deal with them and why they come to me for the same reasons, but that surprises me. Yeah.
So they come to you for the same reason, and yet do you find their approaches to learning what you're teaching them is different?
Oh, we could talk about gender differences all day. Uh, excuse me. What I've learned in over 20 years of coaching is that women are very open to being self-critical, and they'll get quite sometimes not positively, sometimes that's not healthy, but they will dive in and accept the possibility of change faster. Whereas, for example, if I get a chap who has been told to come and work with me for a reason, there's a lot more resistance. Or if someone told him you should go and do this, then there's a lot more resistance. Whereas if he's come to me going, I know you, I've met you, I've seen you speak at a conference, I really need your help, then they'll dive right in. I'm working with a chap at the moment who literally does everything we talk about by every next session, and it's dreamy.
Yeah, it's always great when you have clients that do what you advise them to do. And you work with people one to one, but do you also do group training as well?
Yeah, I do. I do a lot of training in lots of different soft skill and psychology areas. So it can be presenting, presentations delivered differently, assertiveness, negotiation, influencing, tricky conversations, dealing with your teams. It can be leadership. Yeah, all sorts. It all. It was only last year that I actually really nailed it. That it was difficult conversations, and I was like, oh, it would have been so simple if I had realised that's what it was so many years ago. Because I just realised it comes all back to that.
Yeah.
It's a difficult conversation in one form or another.
Yeah. And the human psychology is always to avoid difficult conversations, isn't it?
And that's actually the nub of the issue. It's
Yeah.
because we avoid it that it becomes such a bigger deal.
Yeah. And then it's like it grows and it grows, doesn't it, when you don't deal with it? Okay, so business has been going for over 20 years now. Where or when did awards appear on your radar?
I was on a course last year of about 1,000 people.
Goodness me,
And
what course was that? You can share
it was
that.
Lisa Johnson's OTM One to Many, where it's all about passive. It's not really passive. It's about passive income, side hustles, how you can automate things.
Right.
And there's a large community. There's a lot of people involved, and I knew Sandra Garlick from before. I know you're good friends, and Sandra had the Woman Who Awards. But I was really, and so there's partly that and the Solopreneur Awards. But my eyes were just open that people were talking about awards. I'd always thought, whether it's on LinkedIn or in my community or my clients, these are things for everybody else. And then this is not on my radar. And then I thought, well, I'll apply because it's a really good process to strategically think about your business and how your business is right now. And I found that a brilliant process. And so, yeah, that's how it started. And then I became a finalist for the Solopreneur Awards. And then I applied for the I Also last autumn, which I know you're really familiar with.
Yes. So if you are listening to this episode, the I also is the F Entrepreneur 100 every single year. They pick 100 women who are doing things in their business, but also in their community and supporting others, which is where the I also bit comes from. And they are open at the moment. And they are open, I think, until about September, October of 2025. And then they announce in January. So you were picked for this year, which is great. And you get to go to the House of Lords. How was that?
Yes, it was great. I met some fantastic people. It was fabulous.
Yeah, and it is such a good community to be part of because there's around sort of 600, 700 of us now.
Yeah,
Um,
if you were in the first, so how many years of it? Is it so it's 7 years?
yeah, I think it was 2019.
Ah.
2019 rings a bell. I have to go back and look. But I was at the breakfast where the idea was conceived. So I
Wow.
was at this breakfast with Michelle Ovens and Karen Campbell and a few other, it was about 20 of us, female entrepreneurs. And it was at the Corinthia in London. And it was just a general breakfast, just to chat about business. And there was a couple of MPs there and just talking about the challenges that female entrepreneurs face. And we went around the table and we all introduced ourselves and we all said what we did. And then we kept saying things like, oh, and I also do this and I also do that, you see. And at the end of the breakfast, Michelle sat back in her chair and said, there's got to be something here because I handpicked you all to be here today and you're all doing other things on top of running a business. So there has to be something, this I also thing, and I'm going to go away and think about it. And then, of course, she went away and thought about it and they launched it. And of course, then I got an email saying that you were at the breakfast, so you ought to enter. I was a bit like, oh, okay. So I did enter and I did get picked. And then they run it every year since, which is great. And I'm a big advocate of it because I think it's a really good way of people connecting with other successful business women, but also you've got that toe into the government and policies and things that are going on. We were up in London last year for the female entrepreneurial report that they did, and so you get involved in that side of it as well, which I quite like. So welcome to that. Welcome to that world.
Nice. Yeah, well, one of the really big things, obviously, about awards, and it opens up different avenues, was that I wasn't conscious of Small Business Britain and all of the work that it does, and how many courses and access to things you get for businesses with free of charge. The
Exactly.
work they do in the background to support business is phenomenal. I wish I discovered it years ago. I wish I discovered it earlier to be able to share that with other people.
Yeah. And I think, podcasts like this enable us to share it with people and just sharing posts and talking about it because Small Business Britain is again part of Michelle Ovens' collective. She's also got the Lilac Review, which is all to help disabled entrepreneurs. So there's an awful lot going on. So yeah, we'll make sure those links are put in the show notes. But back to you, Claire. So let's talk about local awards because you were also a winner in the Ladies First Awards. I've not heard of that one before, so let's talk about that one because it is now national. So talk us through this one.
I don't know if they've always been national, actually. I'm not sure, but they happen to be. Ladies First is a network where they meet is a lot in Warwickshire. So that's how I think I came across it. And they have categories, and I went up for the best consultant coach, and it was quite rigorous, actually, and I was gobsmacked that I won. So we had a very nice awards dinner in May, and I walked away with the trophy. So yeah, I was surprised.
And then we met at Sandra's event back in May as well. So that must have been quite a month for you then. Um, so Sandra runs the Women Who Awards. We've interviewed her on the podcast, and she also runs the Solopreneur Awards. And you knew Bina Briggs, who I was sitting with, who's one of our sponsors of the Best Businesswomen Awards. So that was quite a funny moment, wasn't it? Because you kind of bump into people in the middle of, I think it's Coventry Way, the
Yeah.
ceremony. Um, so talk us through the differences that you've experienced with different awards, because obviously you've now had the I Also, you've had Ladies First, you've been at the Solopreneur Awards and the Women Who Awards. So what is there any differences between all of these awards that you've gone for?
Yes, so some you don't have interviews for, some you do, some there's always a nomination. Someone nominates you, or you can nominate yourself, and there's a formality in some sense of the form. Different criteria. Some are more rigorous. So I would say, but they're rigorous in different ways. Some are more rigorous at the application stage, some more rigorous in the interview stage. And I think it's just working out what, being very well aware of what the process is before you enter, because it's easy for me to travel to somewhere in Warwickshire. It'd be less easy for me to travel to, say, Brighton for an interview if that was the case. So yeah, they're very different, and they obviously all have different. So some will have Facebook groups. So for example, Woman Who, you can, I also, you can have, you get exposed to different communities. I would say I would say yes, there are quite a lot of differences. Yours, and I'm obviously not just saying this, yours is just the most amazing schooling for entering awards. So I think, and that was the reason that I entered. Yours was more because I was really aware. I was already aware of your process. I was already aware of your helpful videos on YouTube and all of that kind of thing through your communication. And so I didn't have any idea that I would possibly get close to being a finalist. I just knew it would be a really good way to review what I was doing. Having filled in forms and things before about the business, it's a really good exercise. And yours just happens to come with lots of training.
Yeah, because I deliberately made it difficult, and I always share this because I set the awards up 11 years ago now. And there really wasn't that many awards around then anyway. And there is now, there's tons. Um, but I think it has to be a reflective process for you as an entrant. You know, it has to be that moment where you step back and go, wow, what have I actually achieved here? And if it's just a really simple couple of lines on a nomination form, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't have awards where people get nominated, but I actually think that a proper deep dive into your business has value, even if you don't get selected. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. Things like going through your finances, noticing patterns, having to justify who your audience is or what you're doing or what you stand for, and who else you want to go and help. For example, we can so easily, and it can be quite lonely being an entrepreneur as well, as you know, it's we can get caught in the nitty gritty, or there's often peaks and troughs. If you're really lucky to have consistent businesses that's so predictable, great. Mine's never been that way. And you can, when you're in the middle of it, when you're working in the business rather than on the business, you don't necessarily do that reflection of, well, why did I start? What did I want to achieve? Who did I want to help? Or is it just paying, my rent or my mortgage, for example? And I think that's the difference. It really brings you back to it, and it's energizing. Just doing that is really energizing. And it reminds you when you're, I don't know whether if you were going to film a reel, or you were going to speak at a conference, or you're going to review your website, it helps you with your voice again, thinking, what is it? Where is that verve that made me want to take this leap in the first place? Which after 20 odd years, as it's a long time ago.
Well, you've been a best kept secret for 20 odd years. I
Excuse
mean,
me.
it's unusual to talk to people who have not entered awards until they've got to that stage. But I think the bug will catch you, and I think you'll want to continue doing it, even if it's just one a year or one every other year. So let's talk about that journey. And, we have a real mixed bag of people that listen to our podcast. We know that from the feedback we get. So we have people who are on that early journey and people like yourself who've been established for many, many years. So let's share some tips from your perspective of what has kept you going and kept your business running for the past 20 years. Are there things that spring to mind that you could share?
Um, I think I have been incredibly lucky having amazing clients. I'm really grateful for my clients, and I think part of that is I hadn't been in business very long where I had someone almost bully me into something that I didn't really want to do. I didn't like the way they were treating their staff, and I would have been dealing with their staff. And the stipulation, I didn't like how they were dealing with their staff. Originally, I thought, well, I might be able to help your staff because they need it. And then they were on a tube and they said to me, oh, I want to talk to you about your proposal. Hey, little lady, you just organise with my PA to get your backside down to my office in London and we will talk some more. And I said, and he was shouting, and I said, I need to be honest, I don't think we're right for each other. And and then he just put the phone down. He didn't even respond. And I was a bit shuddered because someone had recommended me, and then I thought, well, that might. It was a client that recommended me to him, so and I was quite relatively inexperienced, not necessarily in life, but in business. And I'm really glad I did that because I've always had that I think I probably give off the right air of who I do want to work with. But it's encouraged me. I think the one thing I would say to someone else, which I probably didn't learn early enough, and I think that the climate now welcomes, is be yourself. Because if you can't be yourself, you're not going to deliver the best to the best of your ability. And you won't attract the people that you really are going to gel with.
Mm.
So one of my early clients retired last week, and there weren't many people at his retirement do. He handpicked people to go to his retirement do. And he's worked with thousands of people, and he's a really established guy in his industry. And he invited me, and I was so honoured to have known him for 20 years. And I'm so glad that that's the kind of client that I attracted. So I would say be yourself, but also know your values. At the beginning of my career, I would often do a lot of value exercise with people as part of coaching or as part of training. And I think if you don't naturally do that as part of what your specialism is, then definitely, if you can count, say, your top 3 values on one hand, to be able to go back to those when you're stuck, or when you're troubled, or when you're stressed, or when you're not trusting yourself in your business, to go back and say which one of those values is not matched, where's the gap, that can give you an extra pillar of strength, I think.
Yeah, that's really good advice. And what are your top three values, Claire? Put you on the spot there.
I haven't reevaluated them for ages, but I still think they're the same: fun, freedom, and integrity.
Yeah, they're good ones. Definitely to live by. And are you still out networking and doing? I mean, you mentioned that you did the one to many, so you're still presumably working on your own personal development and business development as you go, sort of thing.
Yeah, it's probably good that I work in learning because I'm a learning junkie. Absolutely. My other half is like, "Oh, you're always signing up for something. You're always trying to learn." So I just think you never stop learning. I love learning. Yeah, the networking, I think through all of that's one thing through the awards. And obviously now it's a lot more it's Facebook groups, or it's different groups, or you don't have to necessarily, if you can't travel or it doesn't work with your business, you don't have to travel. I think what it's opened my eyes to is how many people I can be connected to, that also you can find people that have got your kind of energy. There are that many people out there on whichever platform you're going to go networking through. I think it is just being personable, because that gives you sort of the support. But also we can sometimes have this FOMO of, I should be doing this in my business, I should be doing that, and watching other people. But if you get to know other people well, and they start, this is where women obviously are great, women are great, go, no, I can't do this, or they'll share their most embarrassing moment, and you feel so much more human in an instant. I think that's really important. I think it is finding your gang,
Yeah.
and it's just finding the people that you gel with, and then they're the people that you can turn to, and on whether it's on a WhatsApp group or whatever. and just, winch and go, oh, I've had this happen. Anybody else think, oh yeah. And, I think that's really important.
So have you ever met anyone on social media that you've now met in person when you share any commonality with?
Yeah, so Bina is, as you mentioned, so Bina and I met years ago on Twitter. The only reason I got onto Twitter, old Twitter, was because my son had this habit. My son was little, and he would wake up at 4:30, 5 o'clock. And I'm not a morning person, Debbie. And so if I had to be, I was like, if I have to be up with him, my learning junkie kicks. I was like, I'm going to make something. This is going to be, he can watch TV, and because I'm not with it. And so I learned Twitter, and on there I met Bina Briggs, and she was part of a learning and development and HR community. And then we had what we would then call, they were called tweet ups. So I was well behind the game. I'm never an early adopter. And then we would meet. And I remember going home, and I think I tweeted, I can't believe these people were so fantastic and so warm and so welcoming and so supportive. I'm still in touch with loads of them now. And this was years ago. I mean, my son's 17 now. He was probably about 4 at the time. So yeah, I think you just find people that you gel with, and there are we go through different stages, don't we? Like we do in life. We don't necessarily, we don't take the same. We don't go through the same journey with people, or we don't take people with us the whole way. You meet different people, and I'm now networking with people that they're just starting their business. They might be 25 years younger than me. It's easy to be now, and it's still fascinating to be on that journey with them.
I know, and I was at a networking event not long ago, actually, which again, weirdly, when you mentioned that, was founded on the whole tweet up thing. And obviously, nobody really uses what is now X anymore. Um, and I walked in, and this was at in Somerset, where I now live. And honestly, I felt like the grandma of the group. They were all so, I mean, a lot of them were actually, my youngest son is 24 and my eldest son is 30. And they were they, they were all that age group. And I thought, oh gosh, am I in the wrong room? But actually by the end of the session, it's a 2 hour sort of social media meet up, and two people that run it talk about social media tips and things. And, by the end of it, we were all chit-chatting away, and, it was actually really good. And they did embrace me, which I was thinking, oh dear, have I done the wrong thing coming to this? But actually, I really enjoyed it, and I've booked to go again in October. So I think we can learn from the younger entrepreneurs, and they can learn from us, can't we? We can share. What do you think about that?
Yeah, definitely. I think that, and because of the speed of technology, and because
Mm.
I think our generation was very much it was a work hard, play hard, but it was you will do well when you work hard. And I spent a lot of my life trying to undo that, but success is hard work. Success equals hard work. That's the only way. And because it's not necessarily true. Some people just, for example, get amazing luck, right place, right time. That's it. They're a millionaire. It can happen. And I
Mm.
think younger generations, because they've come up with technology, and now, AI will be second nature. They look for get arounds, they embrace technology, they value their time. They have a very distinct value of their time, I think. And so there's lots of things that you can learn from younger people. And yes, hopefully there might be a bit of wisdom or other things that, like you're saying, people, even before we had social media, networking people, at the end of the day, it all comes down to connection. And for me, the whole of business is always going to be based on connection, however you do it, whether we're doing it through tech or not. So I think having a diverse network of people is really valuable.
Definitely. And do you think that tech is killing conversations with people?
Without a doubt.
Mm.
At this do I was at last week, there's a chap there, he has 30 staff in his business, he's a CEO, and out of the blue, we were having a different conversation with some old colleagues, and he just said, oh yeah, people don't talk anymore. And I was curious about what he meant. I said, what do you mean? He went, oh, they just do this. And I said, meaning? He said, no one talks, no one picks up the phone, they just email. Everything's email or Slack or Teams or whatever it is, and messaging. And So yeah, I do think, and also we used to just years ago, I used to smoke. And so we were allowed to smoke in the office in my first ever job. So we would pick up the phone, it was dealing with advertising agencies, and we would pick up the phone, dial the number, and with the other hand, pick up a cigarette and have it lit by the time they answered. But you'd never queried picking up the phone because sending a fax would have been the long version. It was fast to pick up the phone. Whereas now, I don't know if you find this, Debbie, but people don't pick up the phone. I will always say to people, pick up the phone. Just pick up the phone. You don't need to book an appointment with me. If I don't get you, I will phone you at my earliest convenience. It's a great opportunity, and we don't recognise that most of us can speak a lot faster, if not at least twice the speed we can type. And we lose all of that connection, and we do it for lots of different reasons. So yeah, I think devices are also making us less confident. It's not just the fact that we're doing less speaking, we're less confident, we don't trust ourselves to command a conversation. If it's tricky, we'll avoid it, we overthink it, we get more stressed, we put more and more tech in between us and the other person. I think overcoming devices and being more human. If devices and tech are going to save us time, then using that save time to have a better connection with someone else would be a really good opportunity. It's a really good use of time, because it's those connections that bring you in the repeat business or the favors or the fix when you need a hand. Uh, ChatGPT can be our friend, and I know some people are falling in love with theirs, but it's not going to. It's not going to replace the human, I don't think.
No, it's not. And you've made some really valid points there. What I also hate is the voice note. Drives me up the wall. And I just think I have people in my team that do it. And I just think, for God's sake, just pick up the phone, because I've now got to listen to your voice note. Might not even be a consistent voice on it because of background noise and things. I get more irritated by voice notes than I do text messages. But I think people use text messages or emails as a way of avoiding difficult conversations. And they'll type up an email, and you may not even get the connotation of what they're trying to tell you from an email. It might come across aggressive, even if they don't mean it to sound that way. So I agree, people just need to pick up the phone. Maybe you should do a campaign, Claire, around picking up the phone.
Well, there's the other part of that is that I when I coach people, people don't necessarily realise this. When I coach people, I'll say to them, we can do video because it's become the norm, or we can do phone. And I'll say to them, because there's a benefit of the phone, and
Mm.
that is a lot of the people I deal with, they have sensitive issues or things that are really hitting their confidence, or a relationship with, it could be a colleague, it could be anyone, that there's something that's deep set for them that was really meaningful, otherwise they wouldn't be working with me in the first place. And to have to worry about what I look like and what they look like on camera to talk to me about it, as opposed to they can sob down the phone and say, I'm sorry, and snuffle and get a tissue. And I'm like, yeah, you go for your life. Because that's actually some of the moments where they get the best realizations and the best ideas and the breakthrough moments. But it doesn't help if they're worried about what they look like sniveling down. They don't want to have to worry about what do they look like to me and what am I doing in reaction to them, because our senses and our conversational skills, we've been doing this since we were a baby. We
Mm.
can we can see people down the phone in a way that most of us don't actually realize. Sometimes in training or in speaking gigs or in a conference, I'll play with people and say, okay, let's just test this. And it's fun and everyone laughs, and then they go, oh yeah, we do know this, don't we? And we know so much more about communication, but we limit it. It's almost like cutting ourselves off at the knees sometimes. But
Mm.
and as you said, a lot of people hiding behind email, and also a lot of people just use it as a track record or to cover their backs and all that. And it's just like, oh,
No,
you know,
never.
if you bonded in that, if you have the, if your message to someone, they could hear very clearly in your voice by phone, there's a lot of integrity behind the reason I'm calling. That will do you better than 11 emails going to and forth like some relay at Wimbledon.
Oh, I hate ping pong emails. I call them ping pong emails. Drives me mad. Oh, it's been great chatting with you today. What's on the future plans for Wildfire? We'll finish off a bit about talking about what you're going to be up to.
I want to do more charity work, particularly for women. So my clients are public sector, private sector. They're, the people that benefit mostly from what I do have money to do it. But there are so many people out there that really need help, whether they're coming out from prisons, they're homeless, they've had awful custody cases, they are, they feel like a wreck, and they feel that a lot of people intervene in their lives, whether it's different organisations that have power over them, whatever it is. And so I want to do a lot more charity work, actually. So I'm looking at how I can roll that out to get funding so that it's not just people that normally access me that can access me. So I don't know quite how that's, it's kind of, it's happening. I don't quite know which way it's going to go yet.
Sounds very exciting. Well, we'll look forward to seeing you at the Best Businesswomen Awards Gala night in October. We will make sure that Claire's details are in the show notes. So if you are struggling with conversations and you want to get more confident, or you want some training around presentation skills or any communication skills for that matter, you'll be able to contact Claire. So thank you for joining me today, Claire, and I wish you continued success.
Thank you, Debbie. Thanks for having me. Great to talk to you.